Howdy all of you delicious people, I'm here today to review Fist of Fury or To Some Chinese Connection. So, now that I've gone on and am wanting to get into more Bruce Lee films, it seems, as this is to be the second helping of a Bruce Lee film, to really much more so get a film that actually fully has Bruce Lee within it, to get a better feel of how eventually Game of Death was to have played out. Because we, of course, through every one of these films have Bruce Lee going through all of these disguises, and also it seems that there is to be a plethora of scenes that are to go on and to have been recycled within Game of Death that we may or may not have realized. Like, the tail ending of this movie was to have gotten recycled in Game of Death, whether purposely or non-purposely, but that goes on to also just irk me. Enter the Dragon was to have also, I guess, gone on and stolen the Bruce Lee Chuck Norris fight going into Game of Death as well, and hearing that from Chuck Norris himself, that that he was actually to have fought Bruce Lee within Enter the Dragon. So I'm like, okay, like, so did they just steal a lot of stuff from other movies to just come up with a little bit of extra scenes that probably Bruce Lee wasn't even in? But so, Fist of Fury. Fist of Fury, to me, is just going by the old-fashioned revenge-like story, which I always loved. Plus, I also wanted a Bruce Lee movie that was much more so focused in the Eastern culture. No offense to anybody. Because, like, I like the visuals and the style and the wardrobe and everything that is to be put together within the Eastern approaching of film, making me want to go on and also watch the Michael Douglas movie Black Rain and check that out, just because there might be some visuals within there that may go on and represent Eastern culture well. But so, Fist of Fury, like, oh my god, for how it doesn't have much of a story, because I don't feel it exactly needs to, because all of it is focused upon revenge, there's a lot of action in this film. There is an all-out, like, school versus school fight out. There is to go on and be, like, Bruce Lee fighting a whole entire group surrounding him, and he hobbles them and frickin' takes them out, and there is so much going on in this movie that, like, you don't really exactly need a story like Game of Death tried to do, which I think it did have a successful bout on. And so, Fist of Fury obviously is an epic film, because, man, Bruce Lee is just looking at people and just chopping them and freaking hitting them and kicking them and all kinds of stuff. This movie is crazy. Like, when Bruce Lee goes on to see that this one guard is not letting him into this, like, park or this location, and he's getting very much insulted by these people that are going on and telling him, it's like, oh, like, well, hey, like, if you act like a dog, you'll get in here. And so he just starts beating the crap out of him. And then he just takes a sign and just, pa! Yeah, frickin' this movie is awesome. This movie is legit, like, so great. How, like, we have Bruce Lee that is just establishing his dominance through all of these people. Just like, heck yeah, I'm gonna chew through all you people. I'm gonna consume you all and frickin' kill whoever is to have gone on and to have poisoned my teacher, my master. And everybody is freaking on my list who is to get in my way. Sadly enough, like, the ending of this tale is to leave us with not exactly a happy ending, But then again, like, someone would have to go on and answer to all of these crimes. It's not like Chen is gonna go and do all of this and get away with it scot-free. But then again, he could have just disappeared by the end of this tale. But really, his thing was that he wanted to go on and protect his family. So, like, that has to be, like, the clear-cut, like, best way for this movie to end, is for Chen to turn around and just be like, hey, like, I realize that these people are the only people that I've left in this world, so, like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to surrender or confess or whatever I need to do. But hopefully that's probably not giving too much away of this film. But so, and you would also kind of naturally assume how, if it's not a happy ending, where it goes on to finish up here. But so, with that said, I believe that this movie is easily available on Tubi right now. But I will go on and give you a list of apps that you can, dare in fact, resist or not, to check them out. So, there, of course, is to be apps like Zelifonic, Zelivonic. I can go on and tell you right now, I've been using this app for a very long time to be able to see a lot of movies for absolutely free. There might be ads in between the movie and whichever, but at the end of the day, you can say that you could see this movie as well as a number of others for absolutely free. I didn't even bother going into Tubi because I already had that Tubi app, but I, in fact, would just go into Zelifonic because I have assumed that most of the movies that I'm to check in there are to be within that app. Also, there is to be apps like Movie Box 2, that is to also still be on Google Play Store to the second of this recording, as well as also there is to be a app called Manic, Mannic. Consistently been using these apps because at some point I'd have to randomly find some movie and I'd have to check all of these apps to make sure it's there so I can watch it, or legitimately I would have to go through all these apps to just get a better looking thumbnail. So, we then would have the last app that is through a Google search of HDO Box, and you'd have to download an APK for HDO Box, and that app is to have you be able to see a lot of variety of film for free, more so than the other apps, because at some point, some of these movies that I've gone on and reviewed in my time, like, they won't all be in the same prior apps listed, like Tubi and Netflix or whatever. At some point, they will just be more and more difficult to find, sadly enough. So, with that said, let's go on and let's get into the spoilers of this movie, because, yeah, like, it's a very basic story. All about revenge. We'd have Chen coming in to have his master be dead and put into a coffin, a funeral, and Chen is to be in such mourning of that loss that he is to want to come to figure out who the killers were, and eventually he will go on to find those exact people, and that is to not be enough. He wants to go on and find everyone who could possibly be connected to his master's death, which ends up being this whole kind of organization directed by director Sudoki. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I'll have to go through the cast and stuff along those lines to figure out who all of these people are, because legitimately I probably won't remember exactly who is who. And also, when I go through full-on spoilers, more than likely I will probably either have to come up with alternate names to figure out who all of these people are and keep them straight, or legitimately there might be some actual pronouncing of certain names that aren't probably correct 100%. Because legitimately I had gone on and just seen this movie but heaven forbid every bit of anyone's name was retained within my brain. Um, and plus, also, like, I just butcher names anyways, because names just are not good for me to remember. But then also, it's going to be even harder because these names are to not be as simple as like Game of Death was, whereas like Billy and and whoever and uh and plus also I am very much to be lazy about legitimately having that gripe. I realize, so my bad. So with that said, let's go on and let's pause this review without further ado because I think it's about that time to go into spoilers because it is about that time yet again. So, with that said, let me know in the comments below how you felt about Fist of Fury or Chinese Connection. How are going on to want to talk about this film? One thing also, straight up. So, Bruce Lee. I'd watched a brief interview of Bruce Lee who had gone on to talk about how they film in Hong Kong, and he mentioned that they have to figure out a way to like best shoot in Hong Kong because eventually there's going to be at certain points of the day like so many people within Hong Kong that a lot of times they have to kind of shoot earlier on in the morning or probably very late at night to try to avoid the mass number of people that show up within Hong Kong because it's such a huge population. And Bruce Lee had also gone on to want to compare kung fu to water, and I thought that was kind of rather interesting. How he was talking about how water can impact, be like how kung fu can go on and kind of be impactful as far as hits and stuff is to be concerned. Yeah, like it was kind of just fascinating to just kind of see this kind of just brief interview, but also like I would have loved to have been able to have at some point Bruce Lee like had an interview where he just kind of goes on about his films. But more than likely, if I go on and kind of search through, maybe I'll find some interviews of some kind. Because I went on to kind of watch other people talk about Bruce Lee. But anyways, let's go on to pause this because it is spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. Oh, by the way, if I haven't said so already, Bruce Lee tears through people. Freaking awesome how he just kind of looks at people, they look at him sideways, he pa and hits them. Like, this movie was so aggressive and just so awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Grading is epic. Freaking this film, it didn't need a story. Like, all it needed was Bruce Lee just tearing through some mofos. So yeah, if you haven't seen this movie, you need to. Regardless of you probably griping that it might be a dubbed over film. Either way, you can say that you can see Fist of Fury Chinese Connection and enjoy it for what it is, which is just Bruce Lee beating the crap out of people and also, again, using nunchucks, it seems. I don't know what it is. Bruce Lee just has a thing for nunchucks in all these films. So let's go out of our way to say that it is spoiler time and fully break down this film. Alright, so in the very beginning of this film, and I just kind of feel bad that I was so gone on and talked about possibly the tail end of this movie. Oh no, I'm gonna probably regret that now. I basically said the ending of the film, almost. But oh well, like you're gonna get a lot of action in this film, so what does it matter? But so the very beginning of this movie is to give us this kind of crawl going on, almost like a Star Wars kind of thing, where it tells you kind of a backstory of this movie. We would come to find Ho Young Chi, that is to have been this legendary hero that had gone on to be poisoned by who they are to go on and try to figure out within this film. And So the very beginning of this is to break down with Chen making his way back to this school, coming to find one person located within the school that is to go on and realize that this is Chen. He has come back, and Chen is to ask, like, "Well, am I late?" And the guy is to be like, "Well, yeah, they're going through the proceedings. Like, here's an umbrella. Go out there and mourn the loss of your master." So we would have these two other men in front of this coffin as it's to be lowered down, and one of them, of course, is to seemingly be like the leader of this whole entire school, and his name is Fan. I believe that's exactly how to pronounce it. It might be Fawn, but I'm gonna go with Fan because it sounds seemingly the way of which to pronounce this name. So Chen ends up making his way to this coffin as there is to be people with shovels starting to put dirt upon this coffin, and Chen loses it. He goes on to start smacking away the dirt, and is to just hop on top of this coffin, just be like, "Hey man, like, do not bury my master," kind of thing. And the people are to go on and just be like, "Hey man, like, let him go. Like, he's dead. Like, there's nothing you can do." And also, it's like, "Hey man, there's so many people here." So Chen is to be so aggressive with not letting anybody bury his master that they have to go on and take the shovel and smack him in the head with it, which I was like, "Oh my god." So they smack him in the head with the shovel. So sometime later, within like 2 days from this funeral, we would find Chen being served some, I'm assuming, beverage and whichever, to Chen, stating that he hasn't eaten in 2 days. And like, yeah, like, we get mourning, but man, this is kind of getting a little out of hand. So we would have the three, I guess, most eldest brethren of this school, and seemingly the leader Fen coming to Chen to talk to him about uh, how, like, whatever, like, Chen is gonna try to do here, like, it is kind of pointless, because really, like, the master is dead. Like, you can't go on and restore a person back to life. So like, uh, hey, like, we just have to move on. And so we turn around and have this shrine to be put forth of this master, master Yonjia, and we have this man that is going on to, like, do this kind of eulogy, and there's to be a huge mass number of people present that are to all go on and just kind of listen to this speech of this man going on and speaking up about this master, and how um, they were to talk about, like, him and his love, and this and that, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, that he had left them. So we end up getting these three other people that are to come into this school to kind of interrupt all of these proceedings. So we have Mr. Wu, who is to be this interpreter, and these two other bodyguards that are behind him, that when I was to have gone on and tried to look up who they were, nothing really legitimately came up. So it's just like, okay, I guess that these guys are going to be bodyguards, and when eventually I have to talk about them later in the big massive fight, they're just going to be bodyguard guys, because heaven forbid they have legitimately had a name that I could have figured out what they were, besides either fighters or bodyguards. Half of the characters, I think, were kind of just to be called bodyguards within this film. So we would have this interpreter coming in to have given this school this framed, just kind of lettering. It seems so. The interpreter comes in, and he is to have been sent by director Suzuki. So of the Hongku school, I believe that's how it's pronounced. I have no idea. So the interpreter comes in and is to hand this family this package, or this kind of bagged, framed thing, and they go on to unveil what it is it says upon this framed uh, lettering, and it comes to find out it is to state sick men or sick man of East Asia, going on to insult these people within mourning. And so we would have this interpreter that is to further go on and insult these people by also just kind of calling them out, to just be like, ha ha ha, like, yeah, we gave this to you, and like, are you gonna go on and have any of you like challenge me because I had sent this to you? Like, come on, anybody, come on and get out of the shadows and just face me. So we have one person who is to, of course, be tempted, uh, who is Jai Chi, Jai, one of the men that I think had gone on to also be in Game of Death, where he was killed by uh, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar character. So I'm like, oh, all right, like, we're seeing him in other films of Bruce Lee. Like, this is great. I think Jackie Chan was somewhere within this film, but I think he was also uncredited. Too bad, right? So one of the men step up, and then Fan ends up telling him, like, hey, like, come back here. Like our master had told us to, like, do not be violent. Like, we're gonna try to go on and just let this guy just have his peace and get the flock out of here. So we have Fan who goes to this interpreter, is like, who are you? Like, why are you here? So of course we have to restate that this guy is to reintroduce himself to Fan, and just be like, well, yeah, like, my name is Wu. Didn't I already say this before? So Wu again is just begging for anybody to just have a taste. Like, come on, just like, can I just go on and just irritate somebody to, like, and then, like, we see Bruce Lee, and he's just like, ugh. And so Bruce Lee, Chen, he gets in there, and he's almost close to, like, facing off against this interpreter. But again, Finn is like, no, 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 like, we shouldn't be doing this. Again, like, think of our master. So Chen then is forced to stop, and so the interpreter is like, oh, yeah, well, like, let me go on and just slap your cheek, and let me go on and just, like, kind of bonk your nose, and know that you're not going to go on and lay a hand to me, but I'm going to go on and further just mock and irritate you, just so you would go on and strike me down. But Chen does not go on and do so. But he will go on and beat a ton of people up. Because after the interpreter is going on to leave, we'd have Chen that makes his way to the Jito Ryu Jujutsu dojo, or school. So Chen makes his way with this with this frame that had been given to them, is now to bring as a present to these people. I mean, like, well, hey, like, I'm here to go on and give this gift to your director, Suzuki, to have it returned to you, to now have you be stated that you, of course, are the sick man of East Asia. So that, of course, gets some people in a tizzy. to have Chen go on and want to challenge these people, and some of them go on to accept. So we'd have these certain bodyguards that were with the interpreter are to face off against Chen, and he, of course, is just to knock them down quite easily. And then we would, of course, have Chen that goes within this school, and then a number of people all start to circle around him. So he's like, all right, okay. So he starts hauling all of them out, freaking taking them all down, kicking and punching. And then he whips out the nunchucks, and then he starts, like, hitting them all in the legs, just starts to hobble them. Like, he really goes on and just kind of, like, cowers down and starts just batting them away within the legs, taking them all down, to then forcing Yoshida, who is to have been in the very kind of back, just kind of sitting around and just kind of like looking on, just be like, well, okay, like, I'm going to go on and I'm going to fight you then. So Yoshida and Chen go into this fight, and obviously, of course, we would realize that Chen is going to take Yoshida down. But then turning around and forcing both of these bodyguards who were with the interpreter prior to eat the sign of the sick man of East Asia, take this framed thing and break it, and are to take this letter, tear it up, and shove it into these bodyguards' mouths, telling them to eat it. And next time, they won't be eating this paper, they'll be eating glass, to just showcase how menacing he is. So Chen then goes into this one area, and it's to knock down this one piece of wood. And one person's like, are you crazy? Like, what are you doing here? So we would come to find the interpreter that was to have gotten, like, carried his way through this kind of horse and buggy like thing to this place, to then come to find Chen, who is just everybody he's seeing coming out of this locale, this school, he's just going on and just beating the crap out of them. And so the interpreter is just like, oh my god, I need to freaking hide. So he hides underneath this place while Chen just kind of walks through, not noticing him. So we would have the interpreter and Yoshida talking to the director, Suzuki. So we would have Suzuki, who's like, how dare those people from that school come here? Like, well then, like, if they're gonna go on and they're gonna do that, then, like, we're gonna do the same. We're going to match them, but this time, like, it's going to be school against school. So having Suzuki and a lot of these people just kind of coming up with these plans, and like the interpreter also coming up with his approach of what they're going to do. So we would then have Chen, who's making his way to this gated area that is to be seemingly a secluded park, I would believe. So Chen meets this man who it seems is to have this kind of look about him that I don't want to be offensive whatsoever, but this guy is to have kind of a turban of sorts and just some facial hair. So as Chen is to want to make his way through this seemingly bodyguarded locale, he would all of a sudden have to be stopped by there being a sign of no dogs and Chinese allowed. So no dogs and Chinese people allowed. But then the further and further Chen is to look upon this location, he is to all of a sudden start to see that there is like some people within this location but then all of a sudden a woman with a dog goes through, and then all of a sudden other Chinese people go through, but then they come back to meet up with Chen to just be like, hey man, like, if you want to come in here, like, if you want to just get on all fours and just act like a dog, I'll bring you in here. And so that's when Chen loses it. He just starts decking people and smashing them against this gate and starting to go on and take them out. So Chen then is to go on and kick this sign and have it go flying up in the air, and he kicks it midair and it breaks into all these pieces. So this was awesome. So now we go back to, of course, uh, the school of which that guys like Fan and Chang had been within this school. Chen, Bruce Lee's character. So all of these people are going on and having some mass practice session within the outdoors of this school. And that all of a sudden leads Yoshida with all of his men coming within this school, starting to haul people away, freaking just slap, chop, and crapping everybody. Just it's freaking awesome. Like, we're even having women who are facing off against all these people. And I'm like, oh my god, yes. Mix it up as much as possible. Like, let the women just beat some dudes. Let's do this. So we have Yoshida that is commanding a bunch of his men to not only just start to, like, take down all these men, but then to go through the school and start to destroy pieces of the school. And that's where we get one of the Fen family here. The one guy who, of course, was also to have been in Game of Death. He goes on to, like, have all of these men surround him, and he starts like sweep kicking a lot of these guys and trying to take them down. Numbers become too much, but then again he runs off because Yoshida is making, or one of the bad guys are making their way to the master's shrine, and he runs to try and save this photo of his master and defend it as best as he can. But then people are just hauling away and just beating his butt because of it, beating his rump. So Yoshida goes on and is to stop everybody, and he's like, okay, like, I think we've had enough. Let's bail out of here. So we now have the school that kind of rejoins itself all together, and they regroup. And so we have the guy with the master's picture, and he's just like, oh my god, like I think we've gone on to maybe just disgrace our master by what we've gone on and done. But so that was legitimately awesome. So we would then have the school that is to be baffled by how this other school had come to them and wanted to fight all of them. They're trying to put the pieces together. They're trying to figure out. It's like, well, the only thing that we could realize, the only person that isn't here out of all of us has to be Chen. And so maybe he had gone on to do something without us being aware of it. So by the time that Chen returns, he's all just like, oh my god, like, what happened to the school? Like, what's going on here? Very much like the Ninja Turtles when they return in the original movie to their sewer and realize that Splinter is gone and the sewer is destroyed. Same kind of thing. So Chen returns to the rest of the group, and there is to be an ultimatum to this group that they're going to have to go on and serve up Chen, or more than likely, this group will be forced to either, it seems, need to close down the school, need to get arrested, a number of things, a number of scenarios. So guys like Fan are telling Chen that he needs to run, that he needs to go on and figure out a way out of this town. Chen, of course, is to resist. He is to want to come up with a plan. He is to really, of course, want to be the defiant one of this group, but is to try as much as he can to also listen to reason here. So, we'd have Chen and Nora. And Fan is to have told Nora, like, well, hey, like, get his stuff packed, like, he's leaving tomorrow, like, he's getting out of here, he's getting out of Dodge, he's running, and we're going to let him run. And so Chen is not sleeping, and so Nora comes to Chen and is like, oh, hey, like, why aren't you sleeping? Like, you really need to get your rest. You're gonna have a hard time just going through all this travel that you're gonna have to do. And Chen is like, yeah, about that. Like, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure things out. So Nora eventually leaves, and then so Chen gets distracted by not thinking at all about him leaving, not at all about where he's going to go on to travel the next day. Instead, he finds who it is had gone on to kill his master, which is to be this butler and this chef, both Feng and Tia. So Chen goes on to find out that these guys were to have been the ones all along to have done in this master. And we'd also come to find within the story the chef, the Tia character, was also Yoshida's brother, who is disguising himself as this chef, sneaking in to just find out some information about this school. And Yoshida goes on to state that a little bit later here. So, Chen, driven by revenge, is to go off upon these men and is to face off against Tia first. And the big blow here is that Chen ends up hitting Tia as hard as he can in the ribs, and the guy goes down. Chen goes on and is calling for Feng. He's like, Feng? Butler Feng? Where are you? Come here so I can beat the out of you, basically. So, Chen finds Feng, beats him to death as well. Then we then turn around and have Fan, the following morning, have next to his bed this note from Chen stating that the master had gotten poisoned by these biscuits. And I guess Chen had gone on to also just figure out who that had gone on to be. So Fan's reading this whole thing is like, oh my god, like, what is going on here? So Fan goes down to his students and is to hear from one of the students, of course, of which that didn't easily figure out the name of who this person is, but I should have, because it seems that he's often to just kind of be the voice of this group, but I couldn't find the name of it because it's kind of hard to figure out who some of these people are at some points. So this one student comes in to mention how Butler Feng and Chef Tian are to have been tied up at this light pole or this phone pole, and they're just hanging there. And like, he saw this and he was just like, well, did I see what I saw? Like, let's go back there to just see if this is legitimately all true. So the entire school makes their way and then find that both Feng and Tia are to supposedly be in trouble anyways. So they make their way to this pole to find these two men hoisted upon this pole, and these ambulance people, or these police officers, are just going on. No, wait, they're policemen because they call eventually for the ambulance. So they start taking these guys down. So the school's looking on, and so the guy's like, well, yeah, like, look, like, I was not telling you a lie. I was telling you the truth. So the school all goes in this room together, And immediately they're thinking, it's like, well, hey, like, whoever had gone on to done this, immediately this school is going to get blamed because this is the butler and the chef from our school. So like, obviously, like, somebody's going to come to us to try to figure out what had happened to them. So like, what should we do here? So we have Fan that is going on and just kind of thinking about Chen here, and that it again could be a possibility that Chen could be a part of this, because again, like, he's missing from the group. And we don't have Chen to answer all this because Chen has gone off to be at this gravestone, and he's cooking up this, I'm assuming, rabbit, legitimately just like rabbit or whatever over a stove, and he's just numbing away at this kind of obscured looking food of sorts. So Nora comes in to meet up with Chen here, as not as to really be the voice of reason, just like, oh my god, like you're really getting this school into trouble, and like, hey man, like, you should really turn yourself in. No, F all of that. Nora's going on and talking to Chen about their dreams and aspirations, and how at some point Chen really wanted to go on and marry Nora, and Nora's like, well, like, what do you what do you think about that? Like, do you think that that can legitimately happen now? Now that you've killed so many people, and now that the school's in jeopardy, like, do you really think that that's all going to happen? But she just kind of lets it go to just like, well, like, but let's think about all, like, we were to have two kids together, white picket fence, like, the life that we had always wanted. So, really, I think all of this eventually ends between the two of them with this kiss, and that they really did love one another. But it was all for naught because Chen was just so caught up in all of the revenge and uh, trying to figure out a way to just honor his master, his teacher. Weirdly enough, I had just gone on to just see little bits and pieces, the early parts of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man film, and I couldn't help but just want to like look at that and compare a little bit of just the revenge where Toby's Spider-Man had gone on to find the possible killer of his uncle, and want as much as possible to seek that revenge, but then finding out within the later movie that it wasn't that exact guy who had gone on to kill Uncle Ben. It had been someone else. To just be like, well, hey man, you need to just be sure who was to have been the culprit to all of this, or who was just tied to it anyways and just wipe them out regardless. So we would then have Yoshida and the interpreter making their way to Suzuki. So they go on to state like, hey man, like, have you read the newspaper about the chef and the butler? They had gotten killed, like, and so uh, we would then have Yoshida talking about how his brother went in to be the chef and whichever. So Suzuki is to want to go on and like really figure out a way to force this Inspector Lowe to go in there and just be like, hey man, like, we're gonna figure out through the police way of doing things how we can just get rid of this school by arresting all of them. And like, the interpreter like tells this to Suzuki. It's like, hey man, like, let's get the police involved, let's get the law involved. And like, if we can't, like, we can only give them so many warnings, we can only tell them that we're coming for blood. But how about we just go on and take the avenue of just like having the law get involved? So Suzuki is like, all right, good idea. So Inspector Lowe goes on to meet with this school, and is of course asking like, well, hey, where is Chen? Like, who is to answer for all of these deaths that have been happening lately? This and that, and so on and so forth. So Inspector Lowe is telling the school that it's like, hey man, 2 days. Like, I'll give you some time. But I want legitimate answers. I want Chen's head. I want Chen's head. I want Chen, and I want this resolved. Like I'm already having this Suzuki guy, this director. Like, he's wanting answers, so I guess I want answers. So we have director Suzuki and a Russian Petrov and Yoshida and the interpreter that are all going on to just kind of sit via these little tables and watch as this woman is to dance around them. This kind of, I would say, like geisha girl or something like that. A girl who is to go on and is to disrobe, for which that she is to barely have had legitimately clothes on anyways, but she is to further just to uh, unsheath her underwears, her bikinis, as it seems within this film. So having to just curve around and figure out an appropriate way to just state what that is. But so the interpreter ends up getting so sloshed after figuring out who Petrov is, and is to make his way out of this whole party by crawling, it seems. But then, like, ha ha ha, yeah, like, I'm just gonna walk the rest of the way because F those guys. So the interpreter makes his way onto this horse, this carriage like thing that he's getting carried by who will come to find is actually Chen. So we have the interpreter telling this man where to go, and Chen is like, aha. So they make their way to this dead end. And of course, the guy has to note to who he doesn't believe is Chen, like, hey man, you're going into a dead end. Like, where are you taking me? So we would come to find out that where we're legitimately taking him is to another pole. So the strength. So Chen lifts up this horse and buggy like thing, and is to just kind of toss it around so the interpreter ends up getting chucked. So this interpreter is trying to state that it's like, oh, it's all Mr. Suzuki. He told me to do it. It's like, it's not good enough. Like, you were involved in this. Like, if I don't take you down, like, then, like, all this is for naught. I have to take everybody who's connected to this thing. So Chen ends up going on to take out the interpreter, and he ends up getting hung on this pole, and 2 women are noticing his body being hung. So we then have Mr. Suzuki who's talking to the Inspector Low. It's like, hey man, like, I want freaking results, or I'm gonna get the consulate to, like, I'm gonna, like, make sure that you're getting the answers and you're getting them right away. And also, like, there's a lot of people who are just getting killed here. So as the Inspector Low leaves, he's like, man, where can I find this Chen guy? Like, God, he's so hard to find. And he's right there next to him, giving him these newspapers, like, hey guy, like, would you like some newspapers today? So the inspector walks off, and so does Mr. Suzuki into his car. So we again have the inspector making his way to this school, threatening them again, wanting legitimate answers. And, like, of course, like, this school is just like, we're not. And so the inspector is to just try to convince them. It's like, well, hey, like, I work for the government. Like, what would you do if you were me? Like, let's have the other shoe being put on the other foot here. It's like, I need to, like, get some kind of answers here. So, like, I'm looking at you people. So again, like, these people, like, will not go on and surrender Chen because they don't legitimately know where the heck he is. So we have a moment between Fan and Nora, and they're talking, and Nora is to give up to Fan what exactly is to possibly be Chen's plan here, and Fan is to just want to hear Nora out. So Chen goes on and is to cut these phone cords upon this pole to make his way into the Hongku school. So Chen disguises himself as this telephone mechanic and is to go to this kind of desk jockey like guy or this secretary-ish like guy. Just be like, hey man, like you guys wanted a telephone mechanic and whatever. And so the guy's like, well, yeah, like we waited long enough. So Chen goes in there and is starting to fix up the phones and notices that Petrov is there, like doing some strength testing, putting a nail into this board. He goes on to start just bending all of these steel and metals, all these pipes and all these weird obscure like things. She's like, all right, like we're showcasing that Petrov is going to be strong, but like, what is that gonna really matter when it's gonna come down to him facing off against Chen, which ends up happening in the later part of the film. So Chen sneaks his way into Mr. Suzuki's office and is to start to fix up this phone while Yoshida and Suzuki are talking. So eventually they're stating what their next plan is going to be of attack. That Suzuki is saying to Yoshida that's like, hey, like, let's go on and send all of our people out to get to that other school to try and kill them all off. So we would have Fan and a lot of the students like Nora and other people making their way to the graveyard that Chen was at some point, hoping that they would go on and find him there to have this be all for naught. So while Chen is to notice a number of students leaving the school, Chen makes his way inside the school to notice that there is a number of, it seems, cleaning men there with these brooms and mops and whichever. And Chen wants no quorum with them, so he's telling them, like, hey, get out of here, scram, beat it. What do I have to tell you to leave? And they won't leave. If anything, they want to go on and face off against Chen, and so he just easily starts to take them down here. So Yoshida ends up noticing what the heck is going on, kind of tightening his dogi, his robe, up, and he's just like, okay, like, round two, buddy. So Yoshida starts to face off against Chen here, but he realizes, like, no, like, I'm gonna whip out this sword. Like, I'm gonna come out here and I'm gonna start, like, fighting Chen with this sword. And so that's when, of course, Chen grabs these nunchucks. So within all this battle, we would then come to find at some point that Chen has to figure out a way to knock the sword out of Yoshida's hand. It goes flying, and Chen grabs Yoshida and kind of puts him down to where the sword goes through his back and just through his bate. And it's like, dude, you are so dead. You are donezo. So Chen then is to go further to try and get closer to Mr. Suzuki and Petrov, to come to find that there seems to be a number of bodyguards to stop him there. So Chen then is to go on, and I think the very tail end of one of the bodyguards, he hits him in the nuts and he goes down. So Suzuki is like, hey, I'll face against him, but Petrov is like, no, this one's for me. So Petrov takes off his blazer and he's like, all right, like, let's see what you got there, buddy. And Petrov, of course, is this Russian guy. He's this champion and whatever. So, and like, also, it seems that they always have to have an American or like a guy that just kind of looks white in this film. There has to just be this whitish looking villain. I don't know why that is. But I guess in this case, it's a Russian guy. Uh, but there always has to be a guy that looks like Carl from the other movie or Chuck Norris like the other film. I don't know why that just has to be. I guess to try and just give us some culture here. I don't know. So no, I'm trying not to offend anybody. I'm just stating the obvious here. So we would have Petrov that goes on to face off against Chen here, and we see Petrov that is kind of getting some kind of just fist like punches here, showing that he has really a good amount of punching power. But Chen eventually, of course, is to go on and do that kind of weird, unusual kind of the Last Dragon slash this movie rotation of the hands. We're starting to see that there's like just kind of multiple hands that just kind of appear while Chen is going on and showing how like skilled that he is. Like he's either moving so slow or so fast that his hands are just like kind of putting up some kind of illusion to confuse this man. So if we were to have seen Petrov's power, we then would have to also turn around and see Chen's power as well, as Chen goes on to overpower Petrov here and just chops him in the neck. I'm like, oh my god, all right, pretty sweet. And takes him down. Then we, of course, have Chen who goes to face off against Suzuki here. Suzuki whips out the blade, so Chen whips out this wood piece. He's like, all right, just chop up this wood piece in a number of pieces, so then I have to alternate into whipping out again the nunchucks to try to figure out a way to combat you with this sword. So all of this fight all comes to a close with, again, Chen goes on and kicks Suzuki right in the throat. He goes flying out of this location, hitting next to Petrov, and he starts bleeding from out of his mouth and he dies. Chen goes on as an established dominance and like, ah, he does this huge massive pose and he screams his battle cry or whatever. So we then go back to Fan and a number of the students who are making their way back to the school, realizing that there's a number of people that are all dead of their students. Trying to go on and figure out if there's anybody left still alive, and collecting them all together to just kind of fix their wounds and like realize that there is not much left at this school. So Inspector Lowe and the consulate is getting involved in this. So Inspector Lowe and the consulate are making their way into this school to, of course, want answers. Where is Chen? Because again, like this guy is going to be like, if we don't get answers from Chen, then we're going to arrest all of you. We're going to take you all in. So Chen, who is to go on and hear all of this in the background, he goes down to this flight of stairs and is to surrender himself and give himself up. And so the last thing that Chen is to go on and do is to look at this Inspector Lowe and ask him, it's like, well, hey, man, like, you're going to go on and leave this school alone, right, if I give myself up completely to you, right? And it's like, hey, man, like, swear on it, like, that you're going to go on and leave them alone. And so it's like, yep, I'll do so. So by the very tail end of this movie, we bizarrely have Chen, who is making his way outside of this locale to have all of these guns just drawn on him. So he bizarrely has to do this weird wild kick to end this film. I don't know why that this movie has to end this way, but it ended that way. It just really doesn't make sense. But so, that's the way this movie bizarrely ends for whatever goofy reason. But yeah, so with that said, Fist of Fury. I'm getting out of here so I can go on and review hopefully another thing, or just go on and realize that this may just be enough. Because I'll probably go on and just get tired like I always do. Because I always just get wiped out after all of these things, and I've also been fasting for 2 days. So yeah, I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Didn't. I don't think I really had much of like notes within this film. Like I just straight up just said what it was. Um, it's kind of sad. But yeah, like there wasn't really much of anything besides just stating what happened. Um, but also like I'm sure more and more it's gonna get very more thin about what I can go on and just kind of state behind the scenes stuff about these Bruce Lee things. But if anything, I hope that people will still like these reviews. I'd hope. But anyways, hopefully going on and getting another video that actually does well, because it's a very weird yo-ish thing going on right now. But then also like there's certain movies where I'm like, yeah, that might have been just a very obscure choice, or like I was just naturally assuming that um, this movie may have gone on and had some kind of fan base to it or whatever. I don't know. Like I'm just drawing at straws at some point. So with that said, I'm gonna get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.